Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Jose Talks Sports. Today is a Monday, and we are coming fresh off a Sunday slate of action in the NFL. And to begin this episode, I want to welcome you. Thank you for the constant support and the growing that we've seen in the channel, as well as the podcasts. And for those that are familiar with me and my content, you might know that I am a fan of the San Francisco 49ers, as well as the Giants and the Golden State Warriors, the Bayarea, of course, my favorite teams. And to begin this episode, I thought I would share my thoughts on the ongoing situation that the Niners are currently found in. Yesterday, the starting quarterback, Trey Lance, entering his second year in the NFL, suffered an injury. He would break his ankle early on in the game and would have to be carted off the field. Now, a lot of San Francisco fans are finding themselves in a state of panic, to say the least. A lot of them are giving up on the season. I know already a few that have expressed their opinions on Coach Shanahan's choice in play calling since bringing Trey Lance into the fold. But I do believe that we have to remain optimistic going forward. We do have Jimmy Garoppolo as the backup. He knows the system. He knows the personnel. They believe in him, and I believe that he believes in them. Moving forward, of course, it is his team. Not too long after the game, it was reported that Trey Lance would require surgery on his broken ankle, and he would miss the remainder of the 2022 season. We wish, obviously, our best. We wish him a speedy recovery and full health in 2023. But moving forward, it is Jimmy Garoppolo's team. And with guys like Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk, George Kittle, Kyle Juszczyk, Trent Williams on offense, and of course everyone on defense from Bosa, Warner, Ufanga, who was emerging as a star in these first two games. They're going to have to move forward, and they look forward to the Denver Broncos this upcoming Sunday. They're going to be playing on Sunday Night Football, NBC. Prior to that game, we do have to discuss the game against Seattle, beginning with a quick 20-0 lead. The San Francisco 49ers were able to assert their dominance over the Seattle Seahawks, who were obviously in a state of a rebuild since losing Russell Wilson in that trade to Denver. Jimmy Garoppolo, upon coming into the game, he quickly established a sense of understanding of the offense, and it reverted back to that San Francisco offense that we've seen in previous seasons. He was able to contribute 2 touchdowns, one by himself and another in a pass to tight end Ross Dwelley. So very happy to see that and seeing the offense kind of regain its mojo and in a way establish its identity. Because with Trey Lance, these first 5 quarters of the NFL season, it was kind of interesting to see how they were going to implement a mobile quarterback such as Trey Lance. But now with Jimmy G as the starting quarterback, they can kind of revert to what they've known these last few years, and it was much more balanced in terms of the run game and in the pass game. I know a lot of people are going to criticize, obviously, John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan for their selection of Trey Lance at the number 3 pick in the 2021 draft. I stand by it. I think, of course, they had the right idea in mind and moving forward with a younger quarterback, a quarterback with more skills and probably a higher ceiling than Jimmy Garoppolo. However, that is also why they kept Jimmy Garoppolo as a backup heading into this season. One, because they didn't have any, suitors to trade to, but also as an insurance policy because, you can never predict these kind of injuries. You can never predict the kind of production that Trey Lance was going to produce. And ultimately, the San Francisco 49ers emerged victorious against the Seattle Seahawks, 27-7. A well-played game by the offense. The defense, of course, stepped up. It's, as of yesterday, it was ranked number 1 in total yards allowed. But moving forward, of course, the question is going to be, how is this team going to work with Jimmy Garoppolo? Are they better off with Jimmy Garoppolo as a starter? I mean, there's already reports saying that there are individuals within the franchise, whether it be the front office or the actual team itself, that believe that the team is better off having Jimmy as the starting quarterback. Of course, in the past, we have seen that Jimmy Garoppolo and winning are very, closely related. The Niners have a good track record with Jimmy Garoppolo as their starter. But seeing this iteration, they head into the season believing that Trey Lance was going to be their starting quarterback, and now suddenly it is no longer the case. It is now Jimmy Garoppolo. I'm excited to see how the offense moves forward. I believe the defense will continue to take care of itself. But the offense, of course, Jimmy Garoppolo is a bit more limited than compared to Trey Lance in terms of his mobile skills. But his leadership and his experience outweigh that of what Trey Lance could have provided in his role. After the game, my brother Jared and we had sat down and recorded our immediate reaction of the end of the Seattle and San Francisco game. Of course, this was fresh off the injury, fresh off the win. I'm going to go ahead and play that for everyone here. Please enjoy our reaction. We are coming fresh off of Sunday's afternoons and morning games. We just witnessed the Arizona Cardinals versus the Las Vegas Raiders finish up their game in overtime. What are your quick thoughts on that game? I mean, the Raiders were winning the majority of the game, and up until the second half, the Cardinals really weren't showing any sense of urgency, really.
Okay, you want my honest opinion? Pros and cons, okay? Cons, the Cardinals won. Divisional rival, I'm not a fan of them, okay? But the pros, though, I had Derek Carr and Darren Waller. They did well for my fantasy, so I'm happy about that, you know? I am bummed out, that the Raiders lost, because I love seeing the Cardinals lose.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a heartbreaking loss for the Raider fans.
And it's just a real shame because, again, they controlled the majority of that first half, and to see them collapse like that and really only scoring 3 points after halftime.
Yeah.
It was a real shame to see what happened to them. A lack of Devontae Adams throughout the game. I didn't really see a lot of presence from him and Derek Carr and their connection. Mm-hmm. But the reason why we were rooting so heavily for the Las Vegas Raiders is because it was not really a divisional matchup, but it had divisional implications for the San Francisco 49ers. Of course, as everyone knows, the Arizona Cardinals are in the NFC West along with our team, the Niners, and we really were trying to have a loss for the Cardinals. That way it can just cushion, the difference between the two teams. As it currently states right now, the Cardinals, the Rams, the Seahawks, the Niners, all 1-1 on the year, but the Niners currently hold the first place in the division as a result of defeating the Seattle Seahawks. The big news coming out of that game, of course, is Trey Lance. It's looking like he suffered an ankle injury that's going to require surgery and have him miss out the rest of the season here in the NFL. Thoughts real quick?
Frustrated, upset, and yeah, because I like Trey Lance, okay? I like Jimmy Garoppolo. I don't have a problem who's the starting quarterback, But I remember last year, for the draft, you called it. You said we're going to draft Trey Lance, And, people were saying, oh, no, we're going to get Mac Jones or whatever. I'm like, no, I'm with you on this side, okay? We draft Trey Lance. I'm like, okay, that's cool. But then again, I had that's a Raven, vision or whatever,
Yeah.
Where, if you guys don't know that one show, That's a Raven, it's an old show from, the early 2000s. She can, have, vision.
She's psychic.
Yeah.
Yeah. She sees into the future.
Yeah. Correct me if I'm wrong, okay? But wasn't RG3, wasn't Shanahan the quarterback coach or, some type of coordinator?
Yeah, he was the offensive coordinator.
And I kind of got a little bit, nervous because, wow, everyone knows what happened to RG3, Shanahan loves mobile quarterbacks. I was so afraid that, this was going to happen again. And I'm like, okay, if you're going to run Lance, okay, cool. But don't let him run the inside, He's going to get hurt quickly, That's what happens to all mobile quarterbacks. Once they get hurt, they're never the same, dude. And that's why I'm so nervous. And yet, he didn't even last 2 games this season. 2 games, dude. And he got hurt. And I was upset because I'm like, I knew, okay? I know I'm not professional, but I knew that was on Shanahan, okay? I don't blame it on Trey. I know Trey's not really good with this whole sliding thing. He can't slide that much. But the play calling, it's dude, every other play, he's running and running. I'm like, dude, he's going to get hurt.
Okay, just to interrupt you real quick, I feel like that's a big part of the game in the NFL. Of course, you're running the risk of getting injuries.
Yeah.
And with Trey Lance having the ability to be a mobile quarterback, of course, there's going to be plays and times where the plays break down that it's going to require Trey Lance to use his athletic ability. I don't think it's fair to blame Kyle Shanahan. I just feel like it's one of those things where, yeah, it happens. People get hurt.
Well, okay, here, let me stop right there, okay? I understand, it might not be his fault, but keep in mind, we gave up so much for him. Who's to say if he's never going to be the same or not? Where do we go from there? And on top of that, we only have Jimmy for one more year. The backup, or third string, Brock Purdy, I can't say anything too much about him, He was Mr. Irrelevant. I'm hoping he's good, but it's like, again, we give up so many draft picks. If there's a scenario where the season is not how it wants to be, and let's say we're last place, and to the point where like one of last place in like the entire league, we don't have a draft pick for the first one either. So really, this season, we have to win. We have to win it all. If we don't win it all, I know what you're gonna say. I'm crazy, whatever. Oh, you say that all year, but it's like in this type of situation, this is do or die.
But here's my thing. Every season you say that. Oh, we have to win. It's do or die. Oh, we have to win. It's must win. It's like, okay, so when is it ever just not we're not supposed to win?
Well, I hear we're a Super Bowl team. I'm like, okay, if we're a Super Bowl contender team, playoff contender team, prove it. Okay? The window is like borderline closed. Okay? It's about to be
borderline closed.
Dude, we're hurt.
You're gonna tell me no, okay. You can't go off of speculation and you can't go off of hypotheticals. So don't give me the, well, what if he's never the same? We don't know that. Okay, so we don't know. That's the
scary part. We don't know if he's going to be the same or not.
Exactly, but we don't know if he's going to be better. You know what I mean? Like, we don't know. I'm just saying. I'm not saying he is. But how do you know Trey Lance is going to come back and play just fine? We don't know.
And that's also another thing, okay? We don't know how he's going to be. But there's one thing that we do need to step up on. The O-line. We got to protect him. Because now everyone knows, well,
protect Jimmy, you mean.
Well, protect the quarterback either way. And it's even more difficult for Jimmy now because he's not really that mobile as to what Trey is, With Jimmy, he's more like a traditional quarterback, because obviously he was the backup to Brady. Of course, he's going to pick up some of the traits that Brady has. And I get that. Brady's pretty good. I like Jimmy, okay? We need the O-line, specifically the right side, to step up. I didn't realize McGlinchey was right there. I thought that was a tight end. No, that was McGlinchey. Okay? How is Kittle more bigger than him? And on top of that, Kittle wasn't playing. I'm like, okay, it's going to hurt us a little bit. Okay? Thankfully, we did pretty good, with the running game and everything. But now, since we're going to have Kittle back, focus more on the blocking, I'm okay. That's cool and all. But I would like to have Kittle more on the field, to try to get more weapons out there for Jimmy. Okay? Which is why we need linemen. I think that's the very crucial thing we need. The secondary, I think they did pretty good. And we all know how you about the secondary, especially you, Jose. So, what do you think, man?
I don't know. I was waiting for you to finish up on that rant you were saying. Jimmy Garoppolo finishes 13 out of 21 on his passing, 154 yards passing as well. 1 touchdown. He averaged 7.3 yards per pass per attempt. I hear you about the whole concerns about Trey, but again, I think the injury is just one of those things. It happens. But the fact is you have to move forward. Jimmy Garoppolo is now the starting quarterback for the San Francisco 49ers. We are now 1-1. We're leading the division as of right now. We have to look forward to the Denver Broncos, who just came off of a win, a tough win, against the Houston Texans. They struggled. Russell Wilson was getting booed in Seattle, and he was getting booed in Denver. I'm hoping that we're able to use this momentum coming off of our Seattle win and get into Denver and take a win from them as well. I do look forward to that game coming up. My only concern is George Kittle. Because you keep bringing up, George Kittle this, George Kittle that. Well, George Kittle hasn't played yet. We just improved to 3-8 in games without George Kittle. So that definitely shows that he is valuable, immensely valuable. I think when he's healthy, he's a top 2 tight end in the league. But to implement him back into the system, I'm interested to see how it'll happen, how it will produce our offense, because like you mentioned, he's going to be used as a blocking tight end. The only benefit that I do see is Jimmy Garoppolo, who knows the offense, he knows the scheme, and these players have a sense of continuity with Jimmy Garoppolo. There's that sense of familiarity. I am concerned about Trey Lance going forward, though, because if you saw after the game, everyone was celebrating and they were cheering, and it was like old times. And Trey Lance is about to enter one of the darkest times of his young career. He's just got injured in his second game of this season, and now he's seeing everyone kind of gravitate back towards Jimmy. So I'm kind of worried what's going through the mind of Trey Lance and how this is going to go forward with the relationship between Jimmy and Trey Lance, because a lot of people have said they have a healthy relationship, a friendly relationship, much better than Montana and Young did back in the day. I think obviously we still know this is Trey Lance's team, but going forward this season, it's Jimmy's. It's, you know what I mean? There's no other option. It is Jimmy Garoppolo's team.
Yeah.
I hear you about the ultimatum about the Super Bowl. I don't think that's a fair assessment. This team has to figure out its identity pretty quickly in terms of how they want to move forward, because they prepared this season thinking one guy was going to be their quarterback and not even knowing if Jimmy was going to be on the roster. And now, just like that, it's back to that Jimmy Garoppolo-led offense. And one thing I wanted to point out is I felt it was more balanced when Jimmy Garoppolo was out there. I felt like they really balanced the run and the passing aspect of the game, whereas with Trey Lance, they really focused on a lot of the runs and some of these, gadget plays where they
overused him.
No. Okay, whether you want to say they overused Trey, I feel like they overused Trey, but they also were throwing in Debo. They were throwing in these run plays, and I'm not saying just focusing on Trey.
Well, here's what I'm afraid of with Trey. It's like, okay, you want to use him? That's cool, but don't overuse him a lot, or else other defenses, they're going to become accustomed to him and get used to him. When I use it, if I were to be a coach, I want to have a quarterback, yes, who could be mobile, that'll help out, but I'm not going to use him every single time. I want to use it for, like, a secret weapon, or, like, if I have to situations, So
what are your thoughts on a guy like Lamar Jackson, then?
Okay.
Because Lamar Jackson is the offense for Baltimore.
Well, yeah, I mean, like, who do they have for receivers?
They have Rashad Bateman, Mark Andrews.
Okay.
J.K. Dobbins, who's just, he's hurt, but still.
But it's like, he's running more, and that's saying something, though. It's like, I think he needs, like, better weapons or something.
No, he does need better weapons, for sure, absolutely. But in terms of usage, they use Lamar a lot.
Oh, yeah. They use him a lot, dude.
He's not getting hurt. Not like this. That's why I don't...
No, I feel like the reason why is because John Harbaugh knows how to use him, though. I feel like Shanahan doesn't know how to use mobile quarterbacks. That's what I believe. Look at RG3, man. He's a great example.
No. Don't do that. I don't like when you bring that up, because when you say look at RG3, he had a successful season. He just happened to get hurt in the one game in the playoffs.
Yeah.
So don't say, like, well, look what happened to RG3. Well, no, with RG3, he put up really good numbers and displayed an offense that wasn't, accustomed to Washington fans for years. And then he got injured. It's like the Derrick Rose thing. Derrick Rose, fantastic player, but everyone talks about, well, if he didn't get injured, okay, but take away the injury. That doesn't change the fact that he was good. He did have that success, just like RG3. So once RG3 got hurt, but again, it's like I go back to the very beginning. In football, it's a physical game. People are going to get hurt. You're never going to be 100%. After your first season as an NFL player, you're never going to be 100% because the toll starts then. Years and years, game by game, season by season, you're going to tack on more mileage on your body. And you're not going to be 100% again. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So clearly a very emotional state that my brother was going through there. He's a very dedicated and diehard fan. We both express our feelings a little bit differently than one another. He obviously is very, adamant about his support of the team. He just happens to do it in a different way than I do. I try to be a little bit more calmer than he is, but nonetheless, we do both support the team at an immense rate. And again, moving forward, it's going to be interesting to see how the team's going to adapt. Speaking of adapt, I want to touch on Sunday Night Football. The Green Bay Packers face their storied rival, the Chicago Bears, in yet another instant, I wouldn't say instant classic, but I would say in the case of Aaron Rodgers, it is a memorable performance coming off of a not so good performance last week in his disappointing loss to the Minnesota Vikings. He, along with the rest of his team, were able to produce a win, 27-10 at Lambeau Field. Aaron Rodgers, in my opinion, is still one of the greatest quarterbacks to have played this game. And I know I had spoken to, many friends of mine who believe that Chicago was going to emerge victorious. I just couldn't help but think of last season, Aaron Rodgers and his proclamation to all the Chicago fans about how he owns them. He was very clear. He wanted to make everyone know that he owns the city of Chicago. He owns the organization of the Bears. And knowing the way, his playing tendencies, he was not going to allow himself to go down 0-2. In fact, there was a statistic that said he was, I believe, 8-0 after losing a game in like the LaFleur era. I might have the date incorrect, but I just wouldn't have bet against Aaron Rodgers in that situation against this team who he is well established that he doesn't like them. He's not fans of the Chicago Bears, and why should he? This is a historic franchise, a historic rivalry between the two of them. I was very confident in this pick. In fact, my father and we made a bet over dinner about who would win this. I, of course, chose the Green Bay Packers, and yet again, I was proven to be correct. Moving forward, I think Aaron Rodgers is going to have to adapt to this young core, aside from Randall Cobb, of course, of new receivers that he has. But I feel that he and Matt LaFleur will figure it out. He's a competent coach with an exceptional quarterback, so I don't see why they can't coexist with one another. They've gone 3 straight seasons with 13 wins. Whether they win the division or not is yet to be seen. I think Minnesota is definitely going to put up a big fight, especially with Justin Jefferson. I anticipate him having a breakout season. Already, apart from what he did last season, I think he's ready to establish himself as exactly what an elite wide receiver could appear to be in the league today. Another game that I thought was very interesting was the Las Vegas Raiders versus the Arizona Cardinals, a game that I wasn't too interested in, apart from the fact that it had a division rival in the Arizona Cardinals, but yet it really came down to the wire. At one point, the Vegas Raiders were up, I believe, 20-0, and I mean, obviously everyone thinks the Raiders are going to win, whatever. Arizona gets blown out again by another AFC West team. However, that was not the case, because the Arizona Cardinals would lead back a fiery comeback that, I mean, not many people would have predicted heading into, halftime. Kyler Murray and company were able to produce enough points to really catch up with the Raiders, tying at 23-23 heading into overtime. But big ups to the defense as well for limiting the Raiders to just 3 points after halftime, I should say. There were some questionable calls by Kingsbury. One instant that I thought was very interesting was, before they went into overtime, there was an example of it. The Raiders call a timeout prior to the 2-point conversion, right? And this is allowing Arizona an opportunity to, maybe rethink about what they're doing, or whatever, right? Maybe to set them off their game, perhaps. And coming out of that timeout, the Cardinals are nailed with a delay a game call, or delay a game foul, I should say. And that penalty sends them back 5 yards. But I just thought that was interesting that this is a team that is on the verge of tying, heading into overtime. And they didn't have the wherewithal or the preparation to come out of this timeout that the opposition called. And we're not prepared to run their play. You can see times where Kingsbury was kind of yelling orders at his players. This is definitely not something you want to see, especially at this point in the game. You want to ensure that there's a clear line of communication and understanding of what the game plan is and what we're doing moving forward. But nonetheless, they were able to convert on the 2-point conversion, and heading into overtime, they win the coin flip, heading into overtime, and eventually they weren't able to produce a touchdown, so they had to give it back to the Raiders. And the Raiders, just when you think they're about to start climbing down the field, all they need is a field goal to win, they fumble the ball. And Simmons is the ones that punches the ball out, which leads to the scoop and score for the Arizona Cardinals. Big win for the Arizona Cardinals. They are now 1-1, just like their division rivals, the Seahawks, Niners, and Rams. Also with the Rams, almost suffering a surprising loss of their own, they had a 28-3 lead to, you guessed it, the Atlanta Falcons. And although the Atlanta Falcons did not win the game, I mean, they lost the game 31-27, they did put up a valiant effort and put up a fight against the defending world champions. And it's back-to-back games where the Rams, I wouldn't necessarily say struggled. I mean, they were completely dominated by the Buffalo Bills in Week 1, but they couldn't really put away the Atlanta Falcons. These guys put up a fight. Although Matt Stafford had 272 yards, you even had Darrell Henderson Jr. with 47 yards on the ground. Cooper Kupp, of course, 108 yards in the air. they just couldn't put away the Falcons. And for a team that didn't really use Kyle Pitts a lot in the offense, I'm surprised that they were able to amass this comeback. Behind a guy like Drake London, the young rookie, the Atlanta Falcons showed, moments of excellence, you might be able to say. So it's going to be interesting, moving forward, how the Atlanta Falcons fare in their division. Obviously, everyone's thinking about the Saints and the Buccaneers, which I will get to in a moment. But also the Panthers. I mean, the Panthers are struggling. They're 0-2, having lost to Cleveland and now having lost to the New York Jets, 31-30, and the Jets ended up coming back from that game. But you look at their competition in the Saints and the Buccaneers, which, I mean, what a game that was for all but 4 quarters. It was 3-3. Heading into the fourth quarter, it was tied 3-3, and then upon the ejection of Marshawn Lattimore and Mike Evans, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers were finally able to produce some offense, ultimately winning 20-10. But to see Tom Brady and his interactions with his teammates, I mean, he was throwing tablets around. You could see him angry and yelling at teammates, yelling at the sideline. And this isn't new. We've seen Tom Brady do this before. But you just raise the question of, like, okay, how is he working through this psychologically? And I don't mean that, to bring into, mental health. That's not what this is about. But he's a 45-year-old man playing the game of football at a high level, I might add. But he recognizes that he doesn't have that much time left. In fact, this could be his final season. We don't know. I think it is. I think this will be his final season. He's losing his patience. This is definitely a team that's capable of contending for the Super Bowl. I don't think they will. But if history shows us one thing, Tom Brady has been able to win a Super Bowl, then take a break, win a Super Bowl, doesn't win a Super Bowl, wins a Super Bowl, then doesn't. Like, it's on and off again. This year, if the pattern continues, means he will win the Super Bowl this year. Again, yet to be seen. But definitely something to keep an eye on, especially now that we're reaching maybe the last season or perhaps the last one of 2 seasons of his storied career. You want to talk about storied careers. Lamar Jackson, in the short time that he has been in the NFL, has established himself as one of the most dynamic quarterbacks in the game today. And with the performance that he had against the Miami Dolphins, nothing short of amazing. Although he wasn't able to earn the victory against them, as the Miami Dolphins would defeat them 42-38, Lamar Jackson, he's able to turn it into another gear. And what I mean by that is, not only did he have over 300 yards passing with 3 touchdowns, but on the ground he had 119 yards rushing and 1 touchdown on the ground. This is a guy who's betting on himself. He didn't agree to the contract that was presented to him prior to the season. He is going to be, what many speculate, a free agent by the end of this season. And with a game like this is the kind of game that people are going to look at and wonder, okay, what are we willing to pay in order to have a talent like Lamar Jackson on our team? I'm happy for the guy. I'm not happy he lost, obviously. But this guy is going to be putting in the effort. He's going to bet on himself. And to have the performance that he did in yesterday's game, I think it's only a sign of what's to come. I do think they're going to win the division, because I don't think Pittsburgh's going to win the division without a quality quarterback. No disrespect to Trubisky. I don't think Cleveland's going to win, the division, especially what's going on with Deshaun Watson. And as for the Bengals coming out of an 0-2, start on the season, a lot of people were predicting that they were going to be a more competitive team, but history has shown us that the team that loses the Super Bowl tends to struggle the following season. I mean, we've seen it in previous years. The Niners, of course, were one of them. The Chiefs last year. So the Bengals, of course, would fall in line in terms of that trend. I don't think they're gonna, be god awful, but I don't expect them to go ahead and make a splash in the postseason. Perhaps I'm wrong. We're not there yet. But as of right now, having lost to the Dallas Cowboys without Dak Prescott, instead having Cooper Rush, it's not a good look, especially for Joe Burrow and the boys, who have now, produced less than 20 points in back-to-back games. A lot of interesting storylines heading into the NFL. Of course, we're preparing for tonight's couple of games. we have two games on Monday Night Football. We have Minnesota Vikings and the Philadelphia Eagles. We also have the Bills versus the Tennessee Titans. Both should be interesting games. I'm really looking forward to the Minnesota versus Philadelphia game just because of the dynamic players we're going to see. Jalen Hurts, Justin Jefferson, A.J. Brown, and others. I mean, it should be an interesting game. It was one of my picks for, game of the week. If you listen to my podcast, Two Beans in a Pod, with my brother Jared, we discussed our, anticipated games for the week, and it was Miami and Baltimore, which obviously, panned out to be a great game. Not a lot of defense in it because it was a high-scoring affair. It was that game, but also the Minnesota versus Philadelphia game. I do have Philadelphia winning the game. I don't trust Kirk Cousins on a Monday night, primetime slot, I should say. Also, just because of the explosiveness that this team was able to produce last week. I know it was against the Lions, but they were the number one rushing team last season in the NFL. So I do pick the Philadelphia Eagles to win this game. And then, of course, I'll have the Bills defeating the Tennessee Titans soundly. I think the Bills are on a mission. They're the overwhelming favorite to win the Super Bowl this year. And whenever that's the case, that favorite never wins the Super Bowl. I like the Bills. I like Josh Allen. I really like Stephon Diggs. I think they're going to go to the Super Bowl. Whether they win it or not, hey, we'll see. We'll see when we get there. But again, I picked them to demolish the Tennessee Titans. And hopefully this doesn't age, badly. I think I'm pretty confident in that pick. In other news, also this past weekend, Canelo Alvarez took on Triple G, Gennady Golovkin, in their third fight of the last, 5 years. They had a first fight in 2017, their second fight in 2018, and now what many are billing to be the final of their trilogy. They concluded the rivalry this past Saturday. A big fan of Canelo Alvarez. A very hot crowd for Canelo. And he was introduced by Alejandro Fernandez, who is the son of Vicente Fernandez, who was very, obviously a well-known artist in the Hispanic community, obviously from Mexico, also hailing from Guadalajara. Obviously, it was very entertaining. I loved hearing the music, loved seeing the entrance, and again, a hot crowd for Canelo Alvarez, who was entering this fight 57 wins, 2 losses, and 2 draws. His opponent, Gennady Golovkin, 42-2-1. Early on in the fight, Canelo Alvarez was more precise with his punches, very decisive. He was establishing dominance with the power punches. Triple G seemed to be a little bit tentative for his style of fighting, especially now that he's hitting his 40s. He's I would say he uses the jab a lot. He's very well known for his jab. Early on, though, he was 2 out of 32 in terms of landing his jab. He wasn't able to establish a rhythm with the jab. It was allowing Canelo to really dictate the fight, allowing Canelo to take control of it and become the aggressor that we saw in the second fight. After the third round, it was clear Triple G had a bruise on his forehead. It was forming. By the middle of the fight, it appeared he had almost 2 horns on his forehead. And with every round that had passed, Canelo Alvarez seemed to gain more confidence, more power behind each punch. And it was said before the fight he wanted to punish Triple G. He really wanted to assert himself and take control of the overall fight and allow Triple G to really feel his presence throughout the entirety of those 12 rounds. So although Triple G had a slow start, in the 9th round he really picked up the pace and he was letting it fly more, and I feel like he knew that he was already behind in the fight. And it was then that he realized, I got nothing else to lose. Why not just go ahead and just let it fly? So from the 9th to the 12th, we got to see a little bit more competitiveness from both men, and they were trading blows, obviously jabs, the hooks, the whole 9 yards. That's when it really became an entertaining fight. But for me, I'm always a fan of Canelo Alvarez's defense. The way he's able to, evade his opponent's punches, like Martha Stewart evading her taxes, the head defense that he's able to produce in avoiding the attacks of his opponents. Obviously, in my opinion, I think the first fight, it ended in a draw, but I do believe Triple G had won that fight. He accused, Canelo of running, and really dodging him throughout the fight, not really standing there and countering. Canelo won the second fight by a majority of decision back in 2018, where he really, he really established himself as the aggressor and came forward with his punches just like he did in this third fight. Ultimately, Canelo Alvarez would win by unanimous decision. But the thing was, these judges, they kind of scored it closer than what I thought it was. One of them had it 116 to 112. Meanwhile, the other two judges both had it 115 to 113, suggesting it was a very close fight. And I don't think that was the case. I think early on in the fight, from rounds 1 to round 8, 9, it was clearly Canelo's fight. He was dictating, he was the aggressor, as I previously mentioned. And it wasn't until the 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th when Triple G kind of finally showed his presence and at times was winning rounds. So I don't believe it was that close, but nonetheless, an entertaining fight. And, I'm always just entertained by the Canelo Alvarez fight. And when he's with Triple G, you have two power punchers. You have two fighters that kind of try to resemble themselves after the Mexican style of fighting. Moving forward, Canelo Alvarez was asked about a potential rematch with Dimitri Bivol, who obviously had defeated him earlier in the year. He would have to move up to 174 pounds to contend for that title that he had lost. And Triple G, he still wants to fight. He says he's not done yet, although he's older and I don't want to say slowing down. But nonetheless, that's the effects of getting older. He still wants to fight. He believes that he can still go at a high level. And I say, hey, why not? You don't want to go out in a loss. You want to go out on a high. You want to go out as a winner. But until then, they establish that this beef is squashed. They think everything's resolved. They seem very friendly and cordial after the fight. I myself, I enjoy these two fighting. So to see them in a friendly and cheery way was kind of off-putting for a moment. But ultimately, you love seeing that sign of sportsmanship and respect between the two. I thought it was a wonderful 3 fights. Of course, apart from the controversy of the draw, Triple G, Canelo Alvarez will look forward to their next set of fights. And until then, we have an upcoming fight. Dimitri Bivol is also competing on November. I will be checking out that fight just to see how he does, how he fares, because I do think that the rematch with Canelo Alvarez will happen probably in May. That's obviously the slate that they like to have. They have him compete in May, maybe September, and sometimes maybe even June or July, somewhere in between. Nonetheless, Canelo Alvarez, again, adding to his legacy, adding to, cementing his spot as one of the best pound-for-pound fighters in the sport. Again, improving his record to 58 wins, 2 losses, and 2 draws. I just want to say thank you guys for listening to another episode of Jose Talks Sports. As always, you can find me on social media sites such as Twitter and Facebook and Instagram at JustJose_3. Be sure to follow my YouTube channel, Jose Talks Sports, where you can find all my updates surrounding the NFL. And with the NFL season around the corner, expect some more basketball content as well. You can also find every episode of Two Beans in a Pod on this channel, as well as on Spotify or wherever you find your podcasts. Once again, thank you for dropping by and talking sports with me. And if you enjoy these episodes, be sure to leave a like, comment your thoughts, and subscribe to the YouTube channel, Jose Talks Sports. As always, my name is Jose. This has been Jose Talks Sports, and I will see you next time.